Sure not, I would like to correct you. I don't think I'm writing about the Palestinians. That's for sure not my goal. What I try to do is to document the Israeli occupation, to document the Israeli crimes, to document the Israeli violations of the international law, and to try to tell the Israelis a story that most of them don't want to know, don't want to hear, and in many cases also have no idea about. At the same time, I'm trying to do one more thing with my modest capabilities, and this is to, if I may say so, rehumanize the Palestinians vis-à-vis an ongoing systematic campaign in Israeli media of dehumanizing the Palestinians. And when for so many decades the Palestinians are dehumanized in Israeli media, it's quite impossible to rehumanize them and to bring the human side of the story. And this I've been doing for the last 30 years. And speaking about influence, I can tell you that the more I was writing, the more Israel went to the opposite direction, which shows a hell of a success of mine. Israel is today by far more nationalistic, more militaristic, and in many ways more racist than ever before. Racism became almost not only legal but totally politically correct, while being a leftist became not politically correct. And all this came to its peak in the last war in Gaza, when Israeli society turned its back in a way that I don't remember ever before, without any kind of expressions of empathy with the Palestinian sacrifice, without any kind of attempt to describe the Palestinian sacrifice in human ways, without any kind of attempt to criticize this war. Things became so bad that even I had to, I mean not me, but my newspaper had to hire a bodyguard for me, because it became tough, became very tough in the streets of Tel Aviv and elsewhere in Israel. I don't remember such kind of nationalistic, militaristic atmosphere and anti-democratic atmosphere in the only democracy in the Middle East, which one can doubt if it is a democracy at all, with such a brutal tyranny in its backyard, and the military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza is a brutal tyranny, maybe one of the most brutal totalitarian tyrannies today in the world, nothing less than this. How can a state claim that it is a democracy when in the backyard all this is happening? But that's another question. But even within Israel, in the last war, there were phenomena like people who were afraid, were scared to go to demonstrate against the war. Like a very prominent Israeli politician, the chairman of the coalition in the parliament, who called to bring me to court for treason because I dared to criticize the war. Like people who lost their jobs because they expressed any kind of empathy with the Palestinians. And this brought us to a new stage in which the Israeli society, which anyhow is living in total denial. Practically, I don't know one society in the world which lives in such a denial like the Israeli society, thanks in many aspects to the Israeli media who enables this denial. But a society which lives in such a denial, which feels so good about itself, which is totally convinced that the Israeli army is the most moral army in the world. Many times I try to say maybe it's the second moral army in the world. Maybe the army of Luxembourg is more moral. Israel's army is the second moral army in the world. Israelis get so offended. How can you dare to claim that the IDF is not the most moral army in the world? People really believe it seriously. An army who killed 2,200 Palestinians, most of them civilians, and there is even not one single moral doubt in Israel. Not only there is no moral doubt about it, the general atmosphere was, why only 2,200? This was the spirit. And the spirit is not only we are so moral, we are the victims. The only occupation I can recall in history in which the occupier feels that he's the victim, and not only he's the victim, he's the only victim. All these values in Israeli society, together with a deep-rooted belief that the Israelis are the chosen people, with the very deep-rooted belief that after the Holocaust, the Israelis and the Jews have the right to do whatever they want, with a very deep-rooted belief that the world is anti-Semitic no matter what Israel does, and any kind of criticism against Israel is anti-Semitism. A wonderful way of manipulating and releasing yourself from any kind of responsibility, because it's not your fault, it's the world's fault. If the world is criticizing Israel for killing 700 women and children in Gaza, the world is anti-Semitic. It's the world's fault. And the very deep belief in Israel that international law is something that the whole world has to apply and has to obey, except of one place. Because Israel is something else. So all those very deep-rooted beliefs, together with the dehumanization of the Palestinians, which enable Israelis to feel so good, because if the Palestinians are not human beings like us, then there is no problem of human rights, isn't it? It is something else. I wrote once after observing one of the checkpoints many, many years ago in the West Bank, I wrote that the Palestinians in this checkpoint are treated like animals. And I got immediately a wave of protest of animals' rights organizations who claim that also animals have some rights. Many times in Israeli society, one can really feel that animal rights is much a bigger issue, much a more vivid issue, much a more issue who brings discussions about morality and humanity than the rights of the Palestinians. And that's the core issue in my view, and with this I will finish my opening remarks. The core issue, in my view, in Israeli society is that almost no Israeli, will he be leftist or right-winger, nationalistic or liberal, there are hardly Israelis who really believe, if you stretch a little bit under their skin, that the Palestinians are human beings like them. Most of the Israelis, the big, vast majority of them, don't see the Palestinians as human beings, as equal human beings. And from this comes everything else. Then they don't have the same rights. Then there's no problem to confiscate their lands. Then there's quite a small problem to kill civilians and children and women. Then there is the whole justification for everything. And you face an Israeli society in 2014, which is so self-content, which has, as I say, no moral doubts, which lives in denial, which believes that 7 billion people of the world are wrong and 5 million Jews of Israel are right, which believes that you don't have to listen to the world. It's enough to listen to your own set of values and beliefs, even though they have nothing to do, in many cases, with universal values like humanity and human rights and international law. Unfortunately, I don't see it, even though I'm so influential in my country, I don't see it changing, and for sure not for the good. It's going only for the bad, and rapidly so. In the last war, there were really cracks, even in Israeli democracy, within Israel, even towards Jewish citizens. And things that we saw in this war, we never saw, as I said, and they are dangerous, first of all, for the future of Israel, not only for the Palestinians. Because by the end of the day, no occupation in history, and you know it in your country very well, no occupation in history lasted forever. No state or empire in history could live only on its sword, like Israel does. And no military force, as strong as it is, and Israel is so strong militarily, no military force was ever a guarantee to continue an evil regime like the Israeli occupation forever. So by the end of the day, not that I see much room for optimism, but let's remember that what we have met in the late 80s, and I would have told you that within months, Soviet Russia will fall, the Berlin Wall will fall, and even the apartheid system in South Africa will fall, within months. I think you would have never invited me again to Estonia because you would have thought that I'm out of my mind. And all this happened, that nobody had foreseen it. I truly believe that the Israeli occupation will not be able to last forever, but the problem is that I don't see the end of it. Thank you.